Welcome to the Open Forum. Once again, we have an opportunity to talk together. Well, not really. Tonight, this is a different kind of an open forum, and then tomorrow evening, the Lord willing, we'll go back to our regular open forum where we'll be taking calls from our listeners. But tonight, we have this is an open forum in which we have invited all of the news people that are interested in what's happening to Family Radio and what we're teaching to come here, and I'm going to be speaking for a little bit because there's a lot of concern about what in the world is happening and what I think and so on, and I very honorably have to face that, and then we're going to give the press an opportunity to ask a few questions, and that will be the way this program will be conducted tonight. Now, for many, many months now, we have been teaching that May 21 is Judgment Day. And, of course, this last weekend became a very interesting weekend because May 21 came and is gone. And all the dire predictions that had been talked about did not come to pass. And so the first question is, camping, what about you? Are you ready to shoot yourself, or are you ready to go on a booze trip or whatever? Well, I can tell you very candidly that when May 21 came and went, it was a very difficult time for me, a very difficult time. I was truly wondering what is going on. In my mind, I went back through all of the promises that God has made, all of the proofs, all of the signs, and everything was fitting perfectly. What in the world happened? And I really was praying and praying and praying. Oh Lord, what happened? Because all through this, I have been just astounded at the way God had opened door after door after door. He had sent wonderful people to us to manage our caravan, to manage the putting out of billboards, the managing of our tract distribution, and so on and so on. And it was just marvelous the way everything was going together until May 21 rolled around, and then suddenly it looked like what happened? What happened? Well, I stayed away from home for one night because I'll tell you, the pressure from that phone ringing and the pressure of people knocking on my door because they wanted an interview was more than I could stand. And so my wife and we went to a motel someplace and spent the night there and watching TV, looking what the news media was doing, and praying and praying. Well, then something interesting happened. I got home, and I began to look at some of the news articles in the local papers, and there was the media, you people know that as well as I do, that you are looking for information in any direction that you can go. And someone called a friend of mine, Dr. Gabriel Otero, and talked with him. And what he had to say was put in, at least in part, was put in the newspaper. And when I read that, suddenly the light dawned. Suddenly I felt way better. Let me talk about Otero for just a moment. He's been a dear friend of mine for over 30 years. And he was the founder of our Family Radio School of the Bible. He was the dean for many, many years. When I spoke at conferences, he very frequently was also speaking at the same conference. And even though he was, in some ways, he didn't understand everything I was teaching, nevertheless, he was one individual that I could sit down and talk with and talk very candidly. And there never was any contention between us at all. fact is, every time he would visit Family Radio, I would be delighted to have him come into my office, and we'd spend an hour or so together going through whatever it was. Well, then he was talking to the news media, and he made a statement, or the news did. I don't know whether the news media got it right, but at least this is what they claim he said. He said, you know, when September 7th rolled around, or in 1994, at the time I was predicting then that there was a high probability that might be the end of the world. He says, you know, I had a private discussion with Camping at that time, and this is what I read in a news report. Otero said, the Lord did return to earth on that date in a mystical way, taking the Holy Spirit back to heaven. And suddenly I felt better. The light dawned. This quotation was not quite accurate, but I did remember the conversation, even though it was all maybe 20 years ago or 18 years ago, because we talked very candidly to each other. What he should have said is that I had said the Lord did return to earth on that date in a mystical way, taking the Holy Spirit here to again begin to evangelize the world. Because on September 7th in 1994, it is a fact that God again began to evangelize the world outside of the churches. And I thought, oh, there's the answer. We have been looking at the information in the Bible too earthly, like it was actually physically going to happen, when the Bible is a very spiritual book. And there's a lot of things in it that are very factual, of course, very factual. But there's also a lot that is very spiritual. But how to know whether to look for it in its spiritual understanding or its physical understanding is a very, very difficult task. But suddenly it dawned on me, oh, I see what happened. We were convinced that on May 21, God would return here in a very physical way, that is, by bringing a great earthquake and by ushering in the final 5 months of the Day of Judgment. And the fact is, when we look at it more spiritually, then we find He did come. He did come. Now let me back up. The fact is, you're going to find out that I'm going to be saying there's not a new date. There's not a new date. We've already been talking again and again about the end of the world being October 21 in 2011. October 21. But we have not emphasized that, because the first down payment, or the beginning of it, was the fact that we would see all of these things happening and usher into a 5 months period of very, very terrible time. You know, I listen to everybody, but I always check them out with the scriptures before I follow that. But today I received a letter from somebody, one of our listeners, and I want to read it. It's a very, very nice statement, and I think I'm learning something from it. The great earthquake and rapture and the universe melting in fervent heat will all happen on the last day, October 21, 2011. On the last day. Well, that's what we've been saying, is the final day. That agrees with exactly what we were saying. Then this person said, the great earthquake and rapture and the universe melting in fervent heat will all happen on the last day, October 21, 2011. In other words, we've been teaching that it would happen on May 21, but it's all going to be compressed on the last day. And this person has got an insight here that, of course, we're going to be checking out very carefully. The great earthquake didn't happen on May 21st because no one will be able to survive it for more than a few days, or let alone 5 months to suffer God's wrath, because everything will be leveled and destroyed after that great earthquake, and there will be no food source and water source to keep anyone alive, and there will be no shelter. And for the great earthquake to come to shake all the dead from out of the graves is a very massive and intense earthquake that will break the earth's very fragile and light crust into many pieces, which will begin to sink into the earth's inner mantle, which is very hot molten lava, which is known as the earth's magma, which is liquid liquid iron, because the earth is always rotating very fast, and the earth's crust is just floating on top of the earth, on top of the earth's mantle. So if the earth's crust is broken into pieces, it will begin to sink into the earth's mantle, and this will begin the beginning of the universe melting in fervent heat, which will not take long. I'm not so sure that all of that statement is accurate about the mantle and so on, but anyway, this is what this person wrote. Now this statement is a good statement, because God is a merciful and loving and compassionate God. He will not let anyone suffer hell on earth for 5 months, as we can see that God will not let anyone suffer for an eternity in hell. So as we can see that there is no eternity in hell, as God is a loving and compassionate and merciful God, because God is the same yesterday, today, and forever, and tomorrow. So if we have no eternal hell doctrine, then we should also expect that no hell on earth for 5 months doctrine, because it is not in God's holy and perfect character to have any long-term suffering for anyone. Now, I want to echo that. That's a very excellent statement, because the Bible tells us that Christ has no pleasure in the death of the wicked. And as I've said repeatedly, when Christ looked at Jerusalem that was under the wrath of God, and he wept over it. Almighty God. Christ never ceased to be Almighty God. And he's weeping over Jerusalem that is under his wrath. And that tells us something, that God is a very compassionate God. And while the law of God demands that there has to be punishment, it does not mean that God is going to punish and punish and punish and punish. One of the wonderful things that God has taught us in these last months and last years is that what the churches have been teaching all through time, and I used to teach this also because I was brought up in a church, namely that on the last day you're going to be resurrected if you've died as an unsaved person, and you're going to stand before Christ as the judge, and you're going to be found guilty, and the sentence is going to be passed. Away to hell you go. And that's the language I've used repeatedly through the years. And you're going to be suffering there forever and ever. Of course, that was real nice for the churches, because then if someone asked with that kind of punishment, I'm frightened out of my skin, what can I do? And then the churches came along, and every congregation had a plan where they would show people how to become saved. You have to accept Christ, you have to do this, you have to be baptized in water, and the other thing, and if you join our church and follow all that we are doing, then you will also you can know that you're a saved person, and when you die, you're going to go to heaven. You can depend upon it. So it really was a terrific club that the churches could use to bring people into their congregation, and that's the way congregations were built. Now, we have learned in these last years, and I teach it very freely, that no, the wages of sin is death, and after you're dead, and you have no more conscious existence, none. And it's true that in the day of judgment there would be shaming of those that are left behind, or that were thrown out of or those who died during the day of judgment, but they would not have any conscious existence of this. So that this person who's written this has really understood that. But now this person goes on, camping should use the immediate and interested media to proclaim the end of the world on October 21, 2011, and to let the media know that God showed us that no man knows the day or the hour of his return is proven to us by this May 21st date, when the great earthquake and rapture didn't happen. And as God is humbling us and throwing us His glorious and perfect character of love and mercy and compassion, God did not allow the great earthquake to happen. Yet so that no man will have to suffer for 5 months of hell on earth. And as God is a merciful and loving and compassionate God, He allowed the warning of the end of the world to go out into the world. So now the warning of the end of the world is let me skip that. Is truly going to come. It's not at the beginning of Judgment Day, May 21st, the 5 months of the day of judgment on earth, as God will judge all people of the world, as this will show the righteous from the scoffers and mockers in the last days, as we can see in the book of Revelation in the Holy Bible, because we want the Bible to be true, as we proclaimed of the end of the world to be October 21st, 2011. Now that letter came from somebody who's not a theologian of any kind, and yet it's got a lot of sense to it. Now the fact is that when we analyze, and now this past few days has been a learning program, believe you me, for me, and I hope it has been for others. Actually, there are 4 days that are very crucial in the end time. And at this point in time, we've talked about all 4 of these days in the past. We've written about them, and we're not making any changes in the 4 days, except on the emphasis on a couple of the days, on one of the days. The first part of the end of the world began on May 21, 1988. It was at that time that God brought His judgment on all of the church congregations. And we've been teaching that for, at least the last 10 years, very definitely, that on May 21, that was a day before Pentecost in 1988, when God began to bring judgment on the church age. And the Bible is dripping with all kinds of information that indicates that God was so upset with the churches, and as they have developed their own rules of what the nature of salvation is and the authority of God. For example, I've said this repeatedly, there is no church that believes that every word in the original language, in the Bible, in the original language, came from the lips of God. No church does. I grew up in a church that did not believe that. The church fathers, the church theologians, did not believe that. I've checked them out. I've read lots of theological books on this, and I find that is the case. They simply said that Paul said this, Moses said that, Jeremiah said something else, Matthew said something else, when they should have been saying constantly, God said this. And he gave the message that he wanted to tell to Paul or to Moses or to whoever it was. And so it makes a tremendous difference on how important the Bible is. If it came from the lips of God, then you tremble before it. You really tremble before it. If it came from the lips of Paul or from Moses, you can say, well, he was a human being and he had some limitations, but God does not have any limitations. Well, anyway, finally in May 21 of 1988, and we already have been teaching that for at least the last 10 years or longer. We wrote a book. I wrote a book, The End of the Church Age and After. It was published in 2002, the year 2002, which was 9 years ago, although I had been teaching it for several years before that. And at that time, there was judgment and there was salvation in view. Let me explain. The gospel message has two sides to it. It has salvation, it has judgment. The gospel message is teaching that God is a God of law. The whole Bible is a law book. And when we break the slightest command, we're under the judgment of God. Salvation comes if Christ made payment for our sins somehow. Then we are not going to be brought to task for that, because Christ satisfied the law by making the payment. And that's the nature of the gospel. There is salvation through Christ. There is judgment for those who do not have Christ having made payment for them. And so here on May 21, 1988, the salvation aspect was a terrible thing to the churches, because at that point, Christ left the churches and installed Satan there. We've been teaching this for years and years and years, and so it was a judgment, and to make the judgment more severe, God actually enlisted Satan, who is the enemy of God, to rule in the churches. So it was a terrible, terrible year, a terrible time. Then the next thing that happened was in the year 1994, the year that I identified with the book that I had written, 1994, question mark. It is there again. There was judgment and there was salvation. It was at that time that it was the Feast of the Trumpets, and just like May 21, 1988 was the day after the Feast of Pentecost. These are biblical feast days that help to structure God's plan for the end. Everything in God's plan fits a very, very structured way. It is not by whim or caprice or by random access of some kind. It's all very structured. And on September 7th, 1994, when I said there was a high likelihood it was Judgment Day, it is true. There was judgment in a terrible way, and there was salvation in a wonderful way. The salvation came because for the previous 2,300 days from May 21, 1988 till September 7th, 1994, virtually no one could be saved in the entire world. We didn't even know how bad it was. Family radio was broadcasting in those days, and we had no idea what was really going on until later on as we continued to study the Bible. But on September 7th, then God brought even more judgment on the churches, because in the world where judgment had begun, God lifted that judgment and began to allow the people to become saved outside of the churches, leaving the churches under judgment. So it was a horrible day for the churches. They continued under the judgment of God. It was a wonderful day for the world, because the world now, people could again become saved. God began to bring in a final ingathering. Well, then that September 7th was a very special day. It was called the theologians call it the Feast of Trumpets, but actually it would have been better called a feast of the memorial of the Jubilee. Now, the Jubilee is a feast day that comes feast year that comes every 50 years in the biblical calendar, and the purpose of the Jubilee is to tell the world that they can be made free from their bondage. It is to declare the gospel to the world. And that happened on September 7th. But it was spiritual. It was not a physical time when Christ came to bring further judgment on the church and to bring wonderful salvation to the world, but it was spiritual altogether. And the evidence that God had really done this to the churches has been seen ever since. If we take, and I've used this illustration again and again, if we take a snapshot of the churches 50 years ago and compare them with the churches of our day, they're entirely different on the average, entirely different. They have far less respect for the Word of God. They have far different rules for marriage and divorce. They have far different music most of the time in the churches. A lot of people ask me from time to time. They ask me, "Oh, no, in our church, we love the Lord. Oh, we love the Lord." And we had 10 people make confession of faith last week. And I begun to ask them, because I know something about what's going on in the churches. I said, "Okay, well, we'll hold on for just a minute. We got to pause for a second." Okay, I want to go on with this monologue. And the fact is that on May 21, 2011, this last weekend, at that time, again, judgment and salvation is in view. The fact is that on May 21, 1988, judgment came upon the churches. On September 7th, 1994, the judgment continued on the churches, and it will remain there all the way to the end. But in the world, God lifted that, and we saw that salvation began again outside of the churches. Now, when God brought judgment on the churches in May 21, 1988, He also brought judgment on the world. But as I indicated, on September 7, 1994, He lifted that judgment. But now on May 21, this last weekend, and this is where the spiritual aspect of it really comes through, God again brought judgment on the world. From May 7, 1994 until May 21, 2011, the world was not under judgment. It was still an opportunity to become saved out there. But on May 21, 2011, we didn't feel any difference. We didn't see any difference in the world. But we know from the Bible that God brought Judgment Day to bear on the whole world. The whole world is under Judgment Day. And this is and it will continue right up until October 21, 2011, and at that time the whole world will be destroyed. And so this is why we don't have to talk about this anymore. The world is under judgment. We are not going to be passing out any more tracts. We're talking about Judgment Day. We're not going to put up any more billboards. In fact, they're all coming down right now. We're not going to be advertising in any way, anywhere about Judgment Day. That's all done. That's all done. The world has been warned. It has been warned. And we did our little share, and then the media picked it up. Boy, did they really pick it up. But now the world has been told. The world is under judgment. And the finish of that 5 months is 5 months from now, from May 21, will be, as we learned from the Bible, October 21. It's the same. We aren't changing a date at all. We're just learning that we have to be looking at all of this a little bit more spiritual. But it won't be spiritual on October 21, because the Bible clearly teaches that then the world is going to be destroyed altogether, but it'll be very quick. It won't be a 5 months a terrible difficulty as we thought it was. That we have learned is we've been taught. You know, the fact is, when you study the Bible, you're always learning, always learning. We had all of our dates correct. We had all the proofs correct. They don't change at all. Every proof, every sign is all correct. The only thing is, God had not opened our eyes yet to the fact that May 21 was a spiritual coming, whereas we had thought it was a physical coming, but He has come. He has come in a sense that He now has the world under judgment. And so our task is done. From now on, our programming is going to be lots of music and lots of teaching to those who are children of God, and trying to encourage them how to live a life that is faithful to the Word. It's the whole business of Judgment Day and all the terrible things we've been saying in the past will all be gone. Incidentally, I want to make one more remark about my friend Gabriel Otero, because he has been a real friend of mine and also a great help to me. You know, years ago, I always struggled with Greek and Hebrew because I never had really learned about Greek and Hebrew. But Dr. Otero, he was an engineer just as I was, so he and I both looked at the Bible very analytical. And his field was Greek and Hebrew. That's where he got his doctorate in, as near as I can remember. And so, he had his office right close to mine, and again and again and again, I would run across a passage that I need to have more information about what does this Greek word mean, or can this possibly be? And he always bailed me out. He really helped me in this whole business of understanding the Greek and the Hebrew language. Then, it was very interesting. About 10 years ago, he came to me and he says, you know, there's an outfit that, I meant to bring one of those books here, but anyway, it's been put together by linguists, not by theologians, but by grammarians, and they were hoping, it's a big 35-volume set, beautiful books. God gave every word in the original language and showed exactly what the grammatical structure was, like did you know that a Greek verb can have as many as 40 or 50 different tenses? We don't know anything about that in the English language. And so there's no Greek student in the world that can know all of that unless he's a genius. And so they, too, all have to go to a grammar book. Well, that outfit printed 50 books, I was told, and then they went bankrupt. And so they had some sets for sale for about $500, which was about $12 a piece for a beautiful book. And And he told me about it. And I said, let's get 3 sets. You get one, I'll get one for my office, and I'll get one for my home. And my, that was a gift of God. And I owe a lot to my friend Gabriel Otero. And but that is the way God has been guiding and helping. But now we're at that point where we're ready to take a question or two from you, if you have a question. Yes.
Mr. Camping. Yes, Mr. Camping. Will you, Mr. Camping, will you on October 21st? Will you give away all your worldly possessions since you won't need them anymore?
Well, but you see, I get that asked all the time. I don't need I'm still living. I still have to live in a house. I still have to pay my bills. I still have to drive a car. And when Christ comes, whatever I have left, I'm going to leave behind. So why would I get rid of it? I still have to live till the end. The end is 5 months away now. So why would I give it all away? I don't understand that question.
How about on the day before, on the 20th?
I'm sorry?
How about on the day before? Would you give all your possessions?
Well, but what would be the value of that? Why would I give it away? Because if it's Judgment Day, it means that it's the end of the world. And so whoever I gave it to, what could they do with it? That doesn't follow. I just have no interest in that kind of a question. Yes.
Mr. Camping, Christian Post. You just said that that your next prediction is October 21st, right? Well, many people sold their property before May 21st, and what can they do right now? They're flat broke. What will you take responsibility for that?
Let me explain something. We in Family Radio never tell anyone what they should do with their possessions. That's totally between them and God. And I get people call me sometimes and say, what should I do? I said, please pray about it. I'm not going to give you any advice. And it is true that a few people have. One thing I notice, however, and that is that when they talk to one person who maybe has sold his possessions, and they then magnify that like everybody's doing that. That isn't true at all. That isn't true at all. There are a few people that did, and undoubtedly, but it doesn't. And there are people who, for example, have I know a few of them that have given up their jobs in order to work for Family Radio, give their time, and they do it because they love the Lord, and they're getting the spiritual blessing of it. But that doesn't mean everybody's doing that. Not a bit.
Mr. Camping, you were very certain before the 21st of May, and you said that God had opened your spiritual eyes. Yet now this weekend you say that you've learned a lot about the Bible, a lot that was hidden. What is there to say that there's still a lot to be learned about the 21st of October?
Help me, Bob.
He's saying that you said that the Lord has opened your eyes May 21, but now you're saying, and you were sure that May 21 was the day, but now you're saying October 21 is the day.
But we've always said October 21 was the day. That's not new. I'm not setting a new date at all. I'm only saying that we didn't understand altogether the spiritual meaning of what May 21 was a day when Christ came and put the world under judgment. Absolutely. There is a big change in the world. They're under judgment where they were not on May 20. They are under judgment. And that hasn't changed. It's only that we're seeing this as a spiritual thing happening rather than a physical thing happening. But the timing, the structure, the proofs, the signs, none of that has changed at all. None at all. And it's just amazing what God has shown us insofar as the proofs and the signs.
Mr. Camping, is it fair to the people who have committed to you and who take your word as doctrine, for them to lead their lives in this way and to then take your apologies for misreading the Bible and expectations that perhaps the date will come later. Do you feel any personal responsibility for all of these people who are putting their hopes and their trust in you?
You know, if you have listened at all to Family Radio, I have said it so many times. I am not the authority. I am not the authority. The Bible is the authority. Now, I know there are people who trust their teacher because he has been, whoever their teacher might be, because they found that he was trustworthy in the past. That's a problem. But I can't change that. I can simply say that very accurately again and again. I am not the authority. I will simply show you where to look in the Bible in order to see this or see that. But all I am is a humble teacher. I search the Bible. I search the Bible. Listen, I read you a letter from one of our listeners. I happen to know this person. This person is not a theologian at all. And yet I listened to it because this person made some very good statements. In fact, I'm a little surprised that how right those sound. Now, I'm not accepting it right down the line. This is something that we'll be studying, and others will be studying. We're trying to be very careful. But the structure of God's timeline has not changed at all. Not at all.
You have no recognition that there's a possibility you can make still another mistake and mislead other folks.
There is no possibility that you might make it. Well, my life and the life of many others is we keep studying the Bible, and if we found that we made a mistake, immediately we're going to correct that. Of course, we have not made a mistake insofar as the timeline, the unfolding. We have not done our correct homework in understanding the nature of May 21, but it is the fact is there. It was not a judgment day that was visible. It's an invisible judgment day. It's a spiritual judgment day, but it is judgment day. The world is under judgment today, just like the churches were first under judgment for a period of 2,300 days. And then when the judgment on the world was lifted and God began to bring the gospel again there and people began to become saved, their judgment stayed on the churches and remained to this day. It has not been lifted exactly, and that's why we see the terrible, terrible changes in the churches of our day. They're still under judgment.
Mr. Camping, previous to the 21st of May, people have asked you about the spiritual judgment day and the spiritual earthquake, and you were very explicit at the time, explaining that you have been saying that
I can only tell you this, that I have been a full-time volunteer for the whole duration.
You didn't hear your Mr. Camping, wait. I didn't understand your question.
Let me finish my question. So previous...
She has actually asked a question. If I typed out, and I'll get you a question next.
What I meant to ask...
I haven't got the question.
Wait. Who's going to go first? Somebody's got to go first.
Yeah, excuse me, Mr. Camping. Sorry to confuse things here. Thank you for having us. I wanted to ask how much Family Radio as an organization has spent on publicizing May 21st as Judgment Day. I know you had $104 million about in assets in 2009. How much of that remains?
I don't know. I haven't kept track of that. I have just been very careful to watch that we were able to have that we still had enough money to pay our bills, and we still have been able to do that. But it was interesting. Somebody must have checked when our accountants made. And incidentally, let me tell you something. 52 years ago, when we organized Family Radio, there was no law anywhere that said we had to have a public account and go over our books. But right from the first year, we employed a certified public accounting firm to independently go over our books every single year, and it costs us a lot of money to do this. but because we have tried desperately always to be absolutely honest and accurate in all that we do, and we don't fudge anything at all. We happen to be non-profit, so we don't have to pay taxes. That helps us to make the money, stretch the money. But it really amused me a little bit. I saw a news article where they said, "Oh, Family Radio took in $100 million in the last 7 years." Like, oh, they're just covered with cash. Look at $100 million. They fail to realize that it cost that $100 million. Most of it was spent to send out the gospel. That's why it comes to us. It's not profit. It is to be used as efficiently as possible. And you know how many organizations reach the whole world with the gospel like we do. Right now we've been publishing in 75 different languages. Man, I'll tell you, that costs a lot of money. And we spend every nickel that we can and still be able to have a good credit rating. We have a very excellent credit rating. But we're not in the business for money. As I've said again and again, I'm a full-time volunteer. Man, if I would, in my position, doing the open forum 5 nights a week and being general manager and president of Family Radio, if I were a typical organization, what salary should I be getting every year? Now tell me, how many? You look at what these public officials get and the CEOs of private companies and so on. And then multiply that by 50 years, and then how much money have I contributed? I'm not saying this to brag or anything at all. I'm just trying to get a little bit reality into this business. This business is God's business. He's the CEO. I'm a servant of His, and I try to be as faithful as possible. I've given money or loaned money when I saw that I had. The only reason I loaned money, it was reported in one of the issues that I had loaned $178,000. The only reason I didn't give it is because what if we would have an emergency? What if my wife suddenly got a severe disease, or I did? Where would we go for cash? We could legitimately ask Family Radio without having them pay it, just to return some of the money so that we had put on deposit there. And so this people talk about money, and it's alien to me. I'm not interested in money.
How about life?
Mr. Campbell,
How about life?
previously,
Just hold on. Wait. Go ahead.
Thank you. Previously to the 21st of May, people have asked you about a spiritual earthquake. And at that time, you were very explicit. You said it will not be a spiritual earthquake. There is no chance whatsoever that it will be a spiritual earthquake. It will be definitely a physical earthquake. How do you reconcile that with what you are saying now?
Well, because, you see, when we study the Bible, we don't know everything. The Bible is very complex. I challenge any one of you. You start reading the book of Jeremiah, verse by verse, or any other book of the Bible, but take a book like Jeremiah, and you start reading it and read every word, and then try to decide, what is God saying? What is God saying? I don't know if any of you have ever tried that, but that's a very good lesson for you to test just what the Bible is. And you'll find that you'll read verse after verse, and you'll wonder, what is God talking about? And yet this is the way we have to search out the Bible. It's very slow and very tedious, and yet we have to do it. And we don't always hit the nail on the head the first time. We were a long ways toward the right. We said that Judgment Day was going to be here. It is there, but it's not physically at this time. It is spiritual. But Christ has come. It is Judgment Day. We have not been wrong about that at all. But
if I understand you well, you are saying in a way that we as mere humans are not really capable of really understanding the Bible. Is that what you are saying?
You are correct. You know, I use the illustration. The Bible gives us this wonderful illustration. A lot of us have heard about the Apostle Paul. He is one of the. He wrote the letter to the Ephesians, to the Philippians, to the Colossians, to the. He has written a whole lot of the material in the New Testament, and it was all dictated to him from God. But he was trained as a Pharisee. And he was a very intelligent Pharisee, highly schooled. The Bible claims that he was trained at the feet of Gamaliel, and in the language of the Bible, that must have been one of the highest grade schools. And he was determined to serve God. Oh, he was determined to serve God. And so, yet, something was wrong. He was living there with people who had just heard about Christ, and many of them, fellow Jews, were looking at Christ as their Messiah. And Paul was at that time his name was Saul. His name was called Saul of Tarsus, and he was so determined. These people are false. They got to be killed if they don't renounce their ways. And he was going to Damascus to haul some of the Jews there in Damascus to Jerusalem, put them on trial, and have them killed. And on the way to Damascus, God struck him down, and he was blinded. And he heard God speaking, "Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me?" And then God said, "I am Jesus, whom thou persecutest," and so on. Then he came into Damascus, and was there blind, and praying and praying. Finally, Ananias, a preacher, came over to minister to him, and while he's ministering to him, we read there that scales fell off his eyes. That's a big statement, because right after that, he was preaching Christ, 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 Christ in Damascus almost instantly, because suddenly his spiritual eyes were open. That's the problem. We not only have to study the Bible and study the Bible and study the Bible, comparing Scripture with Scripture, but we have to pray and hope and beg the Lord, open my spiritual eyes that I might understand, because the Bible is a living book. It's not an ordinary book at all.
How do you feel about the lady who tried to take her life and her two daughter's life? How do you personally feel about that?
How do you feel about this woman that took her own life?
She tried to take her life and her two daughters' lives.
She tried to take her life, and remember?
I heard that someplace, that there's a woman who killed her two children. Is that what you're talking about?
Yes. Did she kill them or attempted to?
I'm sorry?
She attempted to. She did not kill her children.
She took it in a literal way.
She attempted to.
She attempted to.
Oh, okay. Oh, my. That makes me feel better, because death is... murdering is terrible. It's contrary to everything the Bible teaches. That would have been a horrible thing if she had done that. That would make me weep. That would fill me with sorrow that she would do that. The Bible teaches that we are to save life, not kill. If there's going to be death, leave it to God. God knows who He wants to kill and make alive. That's His business, not our business. And so I'll tell you, what you just told me is a great relief to me, because I'd be sick at heart if someone had done such a stupid thing.
Do you take any responsibility for that? Do you take any responsibility for that?
Mr. Campion, sorry? Do you take any responsibility for that fact?
I don't have any responsibility. I can't be responsibility of anybody's life. I'm only teaching the Bible. I'm not teaching what I believe, or that I'm the authority. I'm simply telling this is what the Bible says, and I don't have spiritual rule over anybody except my wife. Because as the head of the house, I have spiritual rule over my wife a little bit, not a whole lot, but she's a wonderful wife, so it doesn't require much. But the fact is, like in a church, the elders and the deacons and the pastor. They have the spiritual oversight of the members of the church. God ordained that. But the fact is that in family radio, we have the spiritual rule over nobody. We don't have a spiritual rule over our staff, any of our staff, whatever. We have people who agree with what we're teaching. We have people who don't agree. We don't have any spiritual rule. All we're doing is teaching the Bible, and the Bible has the spiritual rule, not what we say.
You have not actually apologized publicly, have you? Are you
Wait,
prepared
you already
to
asked your question. Just wait.
Are you prepared to apologize?
You're going to come in? Okay.
Hold on. We have to pause for a
We'll be
moment.
next after.
Now, what is your question?
Mr. Camping, you admit that the Bible is very complex and difficult to interpret, that you made a mistake about what happened on Saturday, that it was spiritual and not physical, even though you guaranteed it would be physical. How can you now, in good conscience, tell your followers that the world will end in October when you have made a mistake interpreting the Bible already?
I have never told anybody that I'm infallible. Not at all. But His proofs are infallible because they come right out of the Bible. The signs that He has given, like gay pride, as a evidence of we're on the threshold of judgment, or the fantastic increase in wickedness, and so on. All of that they are signs that God gives, and that is very trustworthy. But what I say is not. I'm not infallible. That's why I again and again I've. In a way, I'm kind of smiling. So I've been in churches all my life. I have never heard a pastor. This is strange. Like I'm picking. I'm not. I have many pastors who are friends, and but I've never heard a pastor from the pulpit ever say, I used to teach this, and now, no, that's not true. Dr. Spencer did tell me. He's dead now, so I can talk about him. He's a friend, and we used him in family radio for quite a few years. We still use him because, oh my, the Lord had really laid His hand on him. But except for Dr. Spencer, I have never heard a pastor ever say, I was mistaken when I taught you last year. And now I've done a lot more study in the Bible, and God has opened my eyes, and now I want to teach you this. Now, there may be some, but I haven't heard them. And yet, there isn't any student of the Bible that can say, I have never made a mistake, or I only remember one mistake. If we're learning, of course, we're going to teach as God opens our eyes, and then later on we may say, oh my, I said that back then and it wasn't correct. And if you listen to all the family radio, you'll find me here saying again and again, I used to teach this and now I know it was wrong. And I don't hesitate because it's my ego is not at stake. And what difference does it make? All I have to do is be honest. That's all. I'm honest, trying to be honest with the Bible. I'm honest with those who are listening to me.
And you have not publicly apologized. Are you prepared to do that at all?
What was that question?
Are you willing to publicly apologize for what you said about May 21, the character of May 21?
For your mistake.
For your mistake.
I can, if people want me to apologize, I can apologize. Yes, I did not have all of that worked out as accurately as I should have, or I wish I could have had it. That doesn't bother me at all because I'm not a genius, and I pray all the time for wisdom, and when I make an error, then I say yes, I was wrong. I have said that already more than several times tonight. I was wrong. It was to be understood spiritually, not physically. And yet the sense of it is still the same, that judgment has come. The world is now under judgment where it was not prior to May 21. Spiritually, there's a big difference in the world that we can't detect it all with our eyes, but we can know from the Bible.
Excuse me? Excuse me. why did you think there's so much attention from international media for this story?
Why do you think there's so much international attention from the media for this story from May 21? Is that your question?
Yeah. Why are there so many people?
Why are there so many people here right now?
Well, I know this. God has commanded us to go out into the world and warn the world of Judgment Day. We in Family Radio or other organizations that are normally much smaller than Family Radio, and other people don't have as large a pulpit as we have, or been able to do as much as we have, but together, whatever we have done a fairly good job. But God has to do the perfect job, and so He utilizes the media to fill in the gaps where we haven't done it. I can tell you, from one standpoint, I thank God for the media because of all your interest and concerns and there's been articles in newspapers and in the internet and TV and so on, and between what you have done as well as what we have done, the world really knows that we're there. There's another factor in this, of course, and that is man was created in the image of God. The Bible teaches that. Every one of us. You may not know that, or you may never think about it, but you are. We're all created in the image of God. Intuitively, whether we try to be an atheist or an evolutionist or an agnostic or this denomination or that denomination makes no difference. We all know deep in our hearts, we have to someday answer to God. There's finally a final reckoning, because we all know that there is such a thing as sin. We can argue that, oh, not me, I never sinned. We are lying to ourselves. We all know that. We all know that murder is sin. We all know that lying is sin. We all know that sexual immorality is sin. We really know that. We can try to talk around it, but we really know that. And we also intuitively know there is a God. All you have to do is start. Oh man, it really is amazing when man talks about this world developing over billions of years through adaptation. When I think of the millions of life forms, as complicated as they are, and no evolution has ever been able to show the evolution of a fly, or the evolution of a slug, or the evolution of a tiger, or anything else. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. But and every one of you have a fancy camera, real fancy camera. And what happened was that somebody threw some pieces of metal out there about 1 million years ago, and that slowly through the years, that adapted itself until finally you were out there one day and you picked up that beautiful camera that somehow came into existence all by itself. And you're saying, you're nutty, man, you're crazy. Yeah, that's a crazy idea. How did that come into existence? How did that cell phone come into existence? Somebody designed it. Somebody fabricated it and tested it and so on. It's all done by activity by people. And the same way we're created in the image of God. How did that fly come into existence, or that whale, or that tiger, or whatever? God designed it, except He's God, and all He has to do is speak, and there it is, because He is God. But nevertheless, there had to require a designer, a maker, and who cares for this world that keeps going? God.
How much money did you, as Family Radio, raise as a result of this campaign, and do you intend to return it?
How much money has Family Radio raised for May 21?
Yes.
And
I really don't know. I do know. You know, we have had two sources of income. We've had the gifts from our listeners, and we try to make that get as much mileage as we can, because they're not giving it really to Family Radio. They're really giving it because of their desire to propagate the gospel, as every believer is commanded to do. And we are simply emphasizing that we can do this more efficiently. We can get way more mileage out of a dollar with our with our radio stations and so on, the way we are doing it, than you ever could for yourself.
And do you intend to return that money now?
But the other source...
Sir, do you intend to return that money now?
I'm sorry?
Do you intend to return that money now?
Do you intend to return the money?
No, that money is still going out. We still are continuing in business. We're not at the end. Why would we return it? We're not out of business. We've learned now that we still have to go another 5 months. And
will you return it in October? Do you intend to return the money in October?
Why would we return it? It's been given in order to get the gospel. People always come back to money. It was given to get the gospel out, and we're spending it as wisely as possible. And maybe by October 2021, we might only have $10 left.
Will you dissolve the company in October?
I'm sorry?
Will you dissolve the company in October?
Will we dissolve Family Radio in October 21?
If it's the end of the world, God is going to dissolve it. I'm not the CEO. Haven't you heard me say that again and again? I am not the CEO. I'm a servant of God working here, and God is the CEO. We look to Him all the time for guidance, and He is the one who opens doors. I can tell many stories of marvelous open doors that God has given. And I often think, who are we? Who am I? I'm just an ordinary human being. I've had a little college education, but then I look at Family Radio, and we're broadcasting all over the world in 75 different languages. And how did all this happen? How does it happen? And we've got a 300,000 kilowatts AM station in a 300 kilowatt station in mainland in Taiwan, broadcasting to mainland China. The largest station in the United States, AM station, is 50 kilowatts. We have a 300 kilowatt that we broadcast on. We have a 600 kilowatt that we worked out in cooperation with the Taiwan broadcasting people that broadcast to Indonesia and to the Philippines. How did all that happen? Who are we? We're nothing. But God opens the door here, and He provides an individual there when we need them, and from time to time, as we see an opportunity, because we are trying to magnify or make as much hay as we can with everything that we're doing, and if we see a possibility, say, of selling this station and buying this one and reach more people and come up with some cash in the meantime, well, we've done that from time to time, and that also goes into the hopper. It didn't come from the listeners at all. Not at all. None of it. But it's all going out for the same purpose, to get the gospel out. None of it. We wrote into our articles of incorporation when we first started that if we ever sold a station at a profit, no member of the board of directors, present or future, could ever get 5 cents for themselves. Not one of us has ever gained a chunk of money out of Family Radio. Every nickel has been spent as fairly as possible, as efficiently as possible. And all you have to do is look at the records of what's happening in the business world or the political world or the school world. I don't care where you look. And everybody's out this way all the time. All they're looking at is greed. And you don't see that in Family Radio at all. We, in fact, as president, have, if I ever saw anybody that was beginning to get a little greedy, I'll tell you, they were dealt with immediately, because we don't do that. We just don't do that. We're in the business of serving the Lord, not of garnering anything for ourselves.
What kinds of Christians do you believe are going to ascend in the rapture, and what's going to become of all the Jews and Hindus and Muslims in the world?
What is the question?
The question is, who's the true believer, and will everyone else be left behind?
Of other religions.
Of other religions like Jews or Hindus or Muslims or anything else.
What kind of Christians do you believe will ascend in the rapture, and what will become of all the others? The fact is, there's only one kind of people that will ascend into heaven, and that has nothing to do with any religious. They could be a Hinduist, they could be a Muslim or whatever. If God has saved them, they're going to be caught up. And God, in fact, it's interesting. This is very significant in the Bible again and again when it talks about the end of the world. It says the last shall be first and the first shall be last. That's repeated several times. And that has some very important spiritual significance, because the last are those who know the least about the Bible, who have probably never heard the Bible before until they got the message through the media and through family radio activity that May 21 is Judgment Day, and they got that came from the Bible, and so they have heard the Word of God, and if God has decided to save them, and God knows whom He's going to save, they don't have to know all about the Bible. They don't have to know about all the things that we learn in the Scriptures. They just have to know God has spoken, and oh God, have mercy on me. God have mercy on me. And that can be of anyone at all. It isn't and in fact, those who are the first, they're the ones that have had the Bibles all their years, and they don't have an understanding of the truth of the Bible. They have their own understanding. Have you ever wondered? Just think about this for a moment. There are many, many denominations, and everyone, if you happen to be a Roman Catholic, you are convinced this is the best church in the world. If you are a Presbyterian, this is the best church in the world. If you are Seventh-day Adventist, this is the best church in the world. That is, everyone belongs to the denomination that they belong to because they believe that is the best. If you sit down and read their understanding, the Roman Catholics have their understanding of the Christian religion, the Methodists have theirs, the Presbyterian has theirs, the Mormons have theirs, and so on. And you'll find that not any two of them are in agreement. They all have all kinds of different conclusions. Yet they all claim it all came from the Bible. So what does that tell you? That only one of them could have it accurate, because God doesn't talk out of both sides of His mouth. It just shows that what the churches call their Christian religion isn't necessarily from the Bible. Maybe it started, but their theologians have twisted it a little bit here and there to make it satisfactory to what they wanted to believe, and so they ended up with an entirely different Christian religion, or substantially different than all the other denominations. And so it tells you, that's why in family radio, if you have listened at all, what do we emphasize? The church says this or the church says that? No way. The Bible, the Bible, the Bible, the Bible, the Bible. It all comes from the Bible and only the Bible. And we just have to keep studying the Bible and knowing that every word in the original language came from the mouth of God.
You just spoke about how powerful and influential Radio 1 has become, which is precisely why you do have some responsibility. So my question is, what advice do you give those followers who did take you literally and spent everything they had and are worried about how they're going to survive between now and October 21st?
You know, the fact is that just as I'm talking very candidly to you, and we're on the radio right now. There are probably more people listening to the Open Forum tonight than have ever been, because we've had so much publicity about family radio. and we haven't. We've told them ahead of time that we're going to have this kind of a meeting here on this evening, and so they're all hearing exactly what you're hearing.
Well, what advice do you give those who did take you literally and gave away all their money or donated it to Family Radio and now may not have the funds to survive between now and October 21st?
You mean how to survive?
What advice do you give your loyal followers who may have given up everything they have because they took the prediction?
We're not advising. Please understand. We don't advise anybody what to do with how. We're not in the business of financial advice.
No, I'm not saying you told them what to do, but because they did believe at the end of the world, which had been this past Saturday, they gave up all their worldly possessions and their money, and now you have a different interpretation that focuses on the spiritual. So what do you tell those followers who did not understand that, as you did not understand it?
Let me answer it this way. We just had a great recession. There are lots of people that lost their jobs. There are lots of people that lost their houses. Lots of people, not just a few, but lots of people. Lots of people had this and that, and somehow they all survived. They all had maybe a cousin helped them, or a brother, or a sister, or the city helped them, or maybe they had to cut their income, their living expenses way down. Some cases that was really very severe. Well, now I'll tell you what has happened to the average person that has been faithfully listening to Family Radio isn't nearly as grievous as it has happened to countless people during this present recession, where they've lost their homes and so on and so on. So please, people cope, and we're not in the business of giving any financial advice. We're in the business of telling people, look, there's someone you can talk to that can maybe guide you, maybe help you, and that's God. Come boldly to the throne of grace. Pray without ceasing. I'll tell you, it's wonderful. It's wonderful when we get to a point in our life where a lot of times the best times of our life is when our back is against the wall and we don't know where to go, what to do. And so finally you're pleading with God and pleading with God. Oh, God, have mercy. Have mercy. I don't know what to do. And that can be just the time that you're really being drawn to God like you've never been. Believe you me, God is very real, and I can personally testify. I've had many times in my life where I didn't know what to do next, and yet I pleaded and talked with God and prayed, and the next thing I would see a little door open here or a little door open there, which I never expected.
I agree with you. So I think that what they have to do, you're saying, is pray, become self-reliant, and not rely on someone else's information because it may be incorrect, but just to go within and trust themselves, perhaps? Is that the advice, maybe?
Well, no, they're not. That's the point of prayer. You don't rely on your own understanding. That's the point of prayer. You're relying on God to help you. And excuse me. Now, look. I'm praying to God. I don't have a job. So I'm lying in bed. Lord, oh, have mercy. I need a job. Lord, have mercy. I need a job. I've got a family to support. But boy, this bed is comfortable. I don't want to get out of this bed. You know, that's pure hypocrisy. We don't go to the Lord like that. We go to the Lord saying, "Oh Lord, I'm searching, and have mercy. Is it possible that as I search and as I do this and that maybe there is a solution?" But and maybe God wants me to sweat for a while. Yes.
It's safe to say that the mainstream population that heard about May 21st didn't believe it. It didn't happen. Now you say, see, this is ridiculous, and at best sort of a misguided prediction, or at worst some kind of scam. Does it worry you that you have hurt the credibility or made a mockery in some ways of religion?
Oh, no, I don't. Excuse me, just like what I've said before. There's no pastor in the world that's not the right statement. Most pastors would never admit they make a mistake because they're trying to preserve their own credibility in the eyes of those who are listening, or maybe they insist they're maintaining the credibility of the Bible, but the fact is they're not. They're not. And all I can do is go to the Bible and very humbly say, look, I have done some more study, or somebody has sent me an idea about this verse, and I've checked it out, and I find that I have to make a change in it. That doesn't hurt the credibility of the Bible at all. It just shows us that we have feet of clay, that we're not perfect, and God has to keep opening our eyes. And you know, the big God says again and again, He resists the proud and He gives grace to the humble. There verse after verse in the Bible where God really resists those who come in their pride. And there's nothing more. There's one thing that should be seen in everyone who claims to be a child of God is humility. Humility. I'm nothing. Whatever I know or whatever I'm doing, I have to credit God altogether. I pray again and again. There's a verse in Philippians 2 where it says, work out your own salvation. And that is the salvation that God has provided. You work it out. And then it says, for it is God who causes you to will and to do of His good pleasure. So even when we do something well done, I can't take any credit. Oh, Lord, I thank you. I thank you that you guided me this way. I'm nothing. I'm nothing. And that's, I'll tell you, I can recommend this to anybody. It's a wonderful way to live when we walk humbly before God, because you're never trying to show how smart you are or how wise you are. You are simply giving all the credit to God, and that's where it should go.
Then why not stop predicting the end? Why not stop?
Now, my dear friends, I'm sorry that we are at the end of our time, and I can't entertain any more questions. I thank you for being so kind to me. You haven't asked me any embarrassing questions at all. If you thought you could try to find one, at least I haven't. I've been grateful for all your questions, and I just hope that you are faithful in reporting honestly, altogether honestly. If you could even do that favor for me, I would be very happy. Good night.